Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are jumping straight into one of the wildest, most mind-bending stories from the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. We're going to explore a tale that completely throws out the rules of biology, defies all expectations, and honestly, delivers one of the most unusual mythological twists you are ever going to hear. We are looking at the bizarre birth of King Mandhata. I mean, it sounds like the setup to a really strange sitcom, doesn't it? But this is actually the core mystery we're unpacking today. What exactly happens when a powerful, ancient ruler is just stumbling around in the dark and accidentally chugs a magical concoction that was specifically meant to impregnate his wife? Well, as you'll see, it sets off a chronological journey that's just as spectacular as it is weird. Part 1. A king without an heir. Okay, so to really understand how this whole sequence of events kicks off, we first have to look at King Yuvanaswa. By literally every earthly metric, this guy was crushing it. He possessed immense wealth, and he performed sacrificial rites that were legendary for their magnificent gifts. Get this, he even performed the incredibly demanding horse sacrifice a staggering 1,000 times. That's a massive flex. Yet, despite all this piety and power, the saintly king had one glaring problem. He had no son to inherit his legacy. And this failure just completely consumed him. The text tells us his desperation reached such a boiling point that he literally couldn't even continue ruling. So this king of mighty soul and rigid vows just hands all the state duties over to his ministers, walks right away from his throne, and moves into the woods. He dedicates himself entirely to a life of strict fasting and asceticism, hoping he can somehow force the universe to change his fate. Part 2. The fateful midnight drink. So picture the scene. It is the dead of a pitch-black night at the hermitage of Brigu. Now, completely unbeknownst to our king, who's out wandering the woods, a group of saints had just wrapped up a deeply powerful religious ceremony. And the centerpiece of this ritual, a large jar of water. But this wasn't just ordinary water. These mighty saints had infused it with serious occult virtue. They consecrated it by reciting sacred hymns and pouring the pure power of their religious austerities right into it. The explicit goal of this magic potion was for the king's wife to drink it, so she would bring forth a son of exceeding strength and valor. We're talking a godlike son equal to the great god Indra himself. Anyway, the exhausted saints finish this massive magical effort, place the jar on the altar, and go to sleep. And this is where it builds into a disaster of absolute epic proportions. First, King Yuvanaswa stumbles into the hermitage, and he is just parched with thirst. He enters the dark space and tries to call out, but his voice is so incredibly weak from all that fasting, it sounds like the tiny cry of a bird. The saints sleep right through it. Finally, he spots the jar, and without a single second thought, he chugs the magically charged water, totally quenching his thirst. Well, when the saints wake up and realize their highly specific, magically charged water is gone, total panic ensues. Yuvanaswa truthfully owns up to it. He admits he drank it. The revered son of Brigu is absolutely horrified, explaining the incredibly powerful magic that was just wasted, telling the king he did something not at all right. But here's the kicker. They realize the magic cannot be undone. The spell is already cast. The saint just throws his hands up and concludes with this powerful line, "Surely what thou hast done must have been the fiat of fate." Part 3. A medical marvel. Because since the spell is already in motion, the sages have to make a really bizarre, kind of terrifying promise to the king. The magic is still going to work, but now the king himself is going to have to give birth to this kid. The sheer mythological scale of what happens next is just wild. Because actually, scratch that. This isn't your standard 9-month wait. The king drinks the potion, and then 100 years pass away. A full century of gestation for this divinely conceived, magically induced child growing inside a literal king. And then we get to the climax of this medical marvel. After 100 years, a sun shining as bright as the sun physically pierces through the left side of the king and bursts forth into the world. Now, you'd probably think this is the tragic end for King Yuvanaswa, right? Paying the ultimate price for his little midnight mistake. But the text specifically points out, and even calls it strange itself, that the king did not die. In fact, thanks to a promise from those sages, he didn't even feel any labor pains. Part 4. How Mandhata got his name. So the child is born, the father survives, but we immediately hit a massive logistical roadblock. All the deities of heaven gather around, and they pose a very practical yet undeniably strange question. What is to be sucked by this boy? Basically, how in the world are we going to feed a newborn who has just birthed out of a man's rib cage? There's no mother here to nurse him. That's when the great god Indra steps up to solve the problem. He literally sticks his own forefinger right into the mouth of the newborn baby. And as he extends his finger, the wielder of the thunderbolt simply declares, "He will suck me." Now, ancient naming conventions could be incredibly literal. The dwellers of heaven hear Indra say this, and they immediately christen the boy Mandhata. As the text points out, Mandhata literally translates word for word to that exact phrase, "Me he shall suck." His entire identity and legacy are forever tied to this completely bizarre divine feeding method. But listen, Indra's finger isn't just a pacifier. It is absolutely packed with divine energy. The very second the boy tastes the forefinger extended by Indra, he becomes possessed of mighty strength. Instantly, on that exact same day, he grows 13 cubits in size. Part 5. Conqueror of 3 Worlds. With a birth story that explosive, it's really no surprise that Mandhata rapidly ascended into an unstoppable force. I mean, he wasn't just physically massive, he was an instant hero. On his very first day on Earth, he acquired the whole of sacred learning and the holy science of arms simply by the unassisted power of his own thought. No teachers required. And all at once, these legendary weapons literally just came into his possession. The celebrated bow named Ejigava, horn shafts, and a completely impenetrable coat of mail. The guy was so powerful that Indra himself placed Mandhata on the throne. From there, he sent forth his fiat and righteously conquered the earth, the sea, and all the cities. The text even compares his conquest of the 3 worlds to the mighty god Vishnu conquering the universe with his 3 strides. His power was so absolute, so commanding, that gems and wealth came into his possession entirely of their own accord. His reign was basically a highlight reel of ultimate power and piety. He gave 10,000 padmas of cows, which is just an astronomical number, to the Brahmanas. He slew the terrifying ruler of Gandhara. He protected all 4 orders of society. But you want to know his absolute ultimate flex? When a brutal drought ravaged the land for 12 consecutive years, Mandhata simply caused the rain to come down himself, completely bypassing Indra, the actual god of rain, who could do nothing but stand there staring at him. He literally rivaled the gods themselves. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today and leaves us with a truly fascinating question to ponder. King Yuvanaswa meticulously planned 1,000 sacrifices, yet it yielded absolutely nothing. But one thirsty stumble in the dark, drinking a magical potion that was definitely not meant for him, accidentally produced the greatest ruler the 3 worlds had ever seen. So I'll leave you with this. Is destiny shaped by our careful, meticulous plans? Or is it truly just the fiat of fate, driven entirely by our accidental midnight mistakes? Think on that.